And a word from my sponsor, Buy Black. Got the mango here, Tangier, Joy Milk, and Sunburst.
What was that one?
Sunburst.
No, the one before that one.
Joy Body Milk. It's lotion. It's my daughter's favorite. I named it after her. Her name is Joy Risa. And that's peppermint with honey. So today, again, my name is Keith Howell, and we're going to do part 2 of the Indigenous American Black people, Seeds of Kemet. Previously, we talked about how the Anu came up through Kemet, traveled into Europe, and then went into the Americas. And we ended with the Fuego, which are another word for Anu, who are at the bottom of South America today. And they retain their Blackness. So today we're going to look at, it's called the the Zeptimi. And that's going to be an ancient Black civilization that has been recently uncovered by the underwater by the coast of Florida and the Bahamas. And it is an ancient Kemetic civilization. And then we're going to get into the Mandi, which are originally from Kemet, who traveled into West Africa. We know them as the Mandinkas, and then they made 2 excursions actually into the Americas. And we're going to cover one today. And then we're going to be kind of like, I'm going to say sidetracked in 2 ways. I say sidetracked because we have some, we have a white historian, and there's a movement of whites who are trying to say that the Vikings, white Vikings, came to America before Columbus and before the Africans came here. And then I want to deal with the myth that all of us were told from grade school up into the end of our schooling, that the Mongoloids or Asians were the original inhabitants, and they gave us the first civilizations coming from Asia in 3000 BC. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, we're going to go into the Olmec, which are ancient Kemetic people who mix with the Shang from Asia. And I don't know if we're going to have time to get into the Shang, but the Shang actually were originated by Blacks in Asia. But we're going to end up with that, and we're going to have a lot of artifacts showing the African presence in Mexico, and we'll look at pyramids. And so the first thing I want to talk about is what's called the Zeptipi. The Zeptipi, and it is the largest African underwater site in the world.
Is that Zeptipi?
Yes.
Spell it. Spell it.
ZEP.
Uh-huh.
TEPI.
Okay. Doesn't look like anything I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to our brother who just did a tremendous work, and I will be quoting him a lot. And he has a lot of great sources, which I love. The first Americans were Africans by David Imhotep, and again you see the picture of the so-called Anu, or some people call them pygmies or Twa. This person is members of a group that are at the bottom of South America today. And these were one of the first inhabitants of South America, coming directly from Africa. And so the largest African underwater site is 55 miles east of Miami. And we are told by Brother Imhotep, the Egyptian Manding could most likely be responsible for building a relationship between Africa, the Bahamas, and the Americas. The link is an extremely large underwater ancient artifact. This one artifact has more pieces connecting it to ancient Egypt and is larger than any artifact in North America. This relic is larger than life. It is larger than 6 football fields. Specific equipment is not needed. It can be easily seen with the naked eye. This structure is a relic from the Pyramid Age, when some of mankind's greatest accomplishments were being built. And then we have comments from George Little in his book, Underwater Stone Foundation at Bimini, Ancient Harbor Evidence. He says this formation was constructed with massive blocks as large as those used to construct the Great Pyramid. This erection is held together with tongue and grooves, dovetails, talons, and keystones, or just their sheer volume of weight similar to the pyramids. And then we're going to continue. In a second, I'm going to show you a picture, an illustration of this massive civilization. Dr. Imhotep continues, a new man-made structure has been found in the Bahamas a few miles southwest of Bimini in an area called Pino Torello's Column. This area was investigated by the doctors Greg and Laurel Little. They made the first carbon-14 dating on this structure and found located in an area known as Pino Torello's Columns in 20 feet of water. And this is taken from George Little, Ice Age Civilization in the Bahamas. Quote, a complex, man-made underwater multi-room structure was found. From it, they extracted a sample of beach rock from a long, straight foundation. Clearly man-made, the building's foundation has mitred limestone corners and other debris inside the outer walls. In the new dating report, according to an ARE press release, a sample of beach rock from a long, straight foundation wall was carbon dated to between 21,250 before the Christian era to 20,610 before the Christian era. Conventional archaeological wisdom holds that the oldest dates for humans in the area go back to only about 1,000 before the Christian era. The conclusion is that the structure was built on high ground sometime between 21,000 BC and well before 4,000 BC. This is the first site to be carbon dated and to a time long before the last ice age ended, strongly indicating that contrary to standard academic theory, a highly developed pre-ice age culture once lived off the coast of the Bahamas and operated throughout the region. End of quote. And then he goes on to say, I'm going to quote from 2 books. You can actually research this yourself. One book actually has 740 pages, and it's well researched, and it has, I'm going to say, I had to look at it at the library. I couldn't get it, and it has about, I'm going to say about 75 pictures of what we're talking about. And so in this book, The Cycle of Cosmic Catastrophes by Firestone in the year 2006, it says that this civilization was ended by the cataclysm and flood. It brought the Zep-Tipi to a screeching halt. The theory that the cataclysm ended the civilization of Zep-Tipi is backed by physical evidence. The evidence for the ancient civilization of Zep-Tipi can be found in Graham Hancock's book, Underworld 2002. So that's the book I looked at, Underworld 2002 by Graham Hancock, which covers man-made underwater structures all over the world. This book is well-researched, containing 740 pages and filled with many pictures in color. Okay, and now I wanted to show you, where is that? I want to show you what it looks like. Oh man, I lost that page. But before I go there, I'm looking for it. So the Zep Tipi was connected with other artifacts in Kemet. And one of it was, we talked about, okay, here it is, I'm sorry. Here's this structure right here. Can you see that? That's found underwater. And so this was connected with the Ipit Asat. Some of you have been to Kemet. You saw this great educational system, which was part of Waset and Kemet. So Waset was connected with this great civilization over here in the Bahamas. It was international. And just to give you a glimpse of what was happening in Waset, 80,000 people from throughout Kemet were attending this university. And it was the center of religion, politics, and education. So this can be, Zep Tipi was part of a big structure connecting back to Kemet. So they had it kind of like a big university. And this is, we're talking about thousands of years ago. And this is how our ancient Black people actually walked and actually lived and actually constructed in this, in the Americas. So before I move on and I get into the Mandi, which are from West Africa, you know them as the Mandinka because they're going to go into West Africa and then they're going to travel over to the Americas and set up different pyramids, different things. And next time we talk, we're going to talk about Abu Bukhari, who was from Mali, and that is the Mandinkas also. We're not going to get into that today, but based on, you'll hear a little bit about him today. Based on what he knew from the ancestors, he decides to come over here and make that trip in 1311 AD. So any questions or comments before we go any further? All right.
Hold up. Mm-hmm. Americans were Africans?
Yeah.
I hate to digress, but $744. Why? Is that the real $744 for the price of that book?
Get out of here.
Yeah, that's what they have on the internet.
Hey, Sister Farrakhan, you just gave me a plug. I got to tell y'all something. Some of the books I got here, I had to spend like $200. So if y'all could support, but yeah, those books.
The expensive book, that's almost $800.
I didn't know. They didn't tell me that. It's in the library over here. Okay. But I didn't know it was that much. Wow.
Yeah, they have $744 and some change for that book.
I'm telling you, when you see it, though, you're going to be like.
It must be huge. It must be a huge book.
It's huge, but it has a lot. I mean, I just gave you a glimpse in black and white, but they have actual pictures. This was
okay. Okay.
And they show you other landmarks throughout the world, and most of them are blacks. And what I got out of it, when I get out of all of this, a lot of this, you know, a lot of this has been buried. It looks like it was lost, but actually it's been hidden. It takes I would say it would take a whole year. You would need a yearly course to talk about blacks in America before Columbus. We had that much influence here. We were that thick. I count 15 migrations we had. And we were tremendous in developing of civilizations here. Once this pandemic is over, I know me and my wife are going to travel to some of the places that I've learned about and I've shared with y'all, particularly in St. Louis, the Mississippi River, all those pyramids. But they've done a job on us. Wow. But yeah, that's deep. I didn't know that. $744. Wow.
Yeah, that's what came up. More than once.
Wow. Well, I had to spread because some of the books I have are 250. this one, I'm gonna give him a plug. Larry Bookstore in Camden on 6th Street.
Oh yeah, I know where that is.
He's actually giving me 5 books that are out of print.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm going to show you some of them today. But the next people we want to talk about are the Mandi people. And again, these are the Mandinkas. We call them the Mandinkas today, but they're originally from West Africa. I'm sorry, Kemet. And we're going to go back to my brother, David Imhotep. And he says that the Manding people sailed to the Americas millennia before Columbus, leaving many artifacts for us to examine. Mandingo, by the way, is the name currently given to a very important division of Black people in West Africa. It is seemingly a corruption of a term applied to an important section of this group, the Mandinaka or Mandininga. And then he puts in parentheses, Mandinka, Mandinga, Mandingo. Dr. Imhotep has heard this word pronounced by the Mandingo as Mandina or even Medina. It seems to be derived from the racial name Mandi, coupled with the suffix NKA or NKE, meaning people, the people of Mande. And so he goes further to tell us about Muslim historian talks about trips coming from Mali into the Americas. And this is taken from Al Omari. His document, he documents 2 trips made by Muslim sailors from Mali. These voyages would have taken place in either 1307 or 1312. The first of these voyages was made with 400 ships. Africans have been sailing to the Americas for tens of thousands of years. It seems hard to believe that the Muslim emperor of Mali, Abukar II, rose one morning and out of nowhere sent 400 boats to the Americas. So I want to put that in perspective. We're going to go into detail about that next time, part 3, which will be the final part on this, on the Americas. So Abukar II, he's heard about all of these ships and all this land over America. He sends people. He sends a general who has 400 ships. None of them come back except one. And so now he's really curious. He tells his brother, Mansa Musa, listen, I got to go over there. If I'm not back in a certain time, you take over. And so he left in 1311. 1313, Mansa Musa takes over, and in 1324, we know about the famous pilgrimage he made to Mecca. But we're going to find out next time where he actually ended up, who he became in the Americas. Europeans try to say they got lost and never came back. Oh, no. We find them. It comes up under another name, though. But it's them. And we know that by all the Kemetic artifacts, all the symbols. And so David Imhotep continues, it's probable that since Africans have been sailing to the Americas by at least 56,000 years ago, Abu Bakr found out about these Africans traveling to the Americas and wanted to investigate. A year after he sent an exploratorial fleet to the west, Abu Bakr II himself left his throne in 1312 AD to his brother Mansa Musa and sailed away never to return. It is documented that the second voyage contained 2,000 ships. Eurocentrics, however, say they don't know what happened to them or they were never seen or heard of again. And that is just not true, according to Brother Imhotep. We do know what happened to them. They sailed to South America. And in the foreword of this book, Dr. Clyde Winter shows that after the Africans from the Mali expedition landed in the Americas, they left their Mandi inscriptions in the different places they traveled in the Americas. And we're going to explore some of that today, but mainly next time, we're going to look at what Abu Bakari did and 2 other trips to Africa. All right, so the Mande are prevalent. They're all over. You can find them. And we're going to find them again in Southwest Colorado. We're going to find them in the adobe cliff dwellings. And this is taken from The Architects of the Underworld by Bernice Rux. And then again, Mr. Winters from his video, you can catch this on YouTube, y'all. The Malay Discovery of America is on YouTube. I'm gonna say that again, the Malay Discovery of America on YouTube. Now, he's talking about the adobe cliff dwellings. Remember, many Manding lived in ancient Egypt. Years later, when they reached Western Africa, instead of building stone pyramids, they built dirt pyramids, which are called mounds. And we talked about that last time, how the Anu had all these mounds in North America. The Manding lived on mounds along the Niger River. It was most likely Africans who built the mound cultures of ancient America, primarily the Manding. Was it the tall Manding who built the mounds in Africa? Yes, however, they were not the first to do so. The Dogon were not the first to build the cliff dwellings in Malay either, because it was the shorter Telem people who predate tall Africans and built mounds and cliff dwellings before tall Africans. So who were these Telem people, and from where did they originate? One of the regions to which the short-statured Anu or Twa or Pygmy migrated after leaving the Nile Valley was West Africa. And so what you're dealing with is just a change in names. These are really the Anu. It depends on what period of time, but these are the Anu. It was they who were called the Telem people and were short-statured. Later, when the Dogon moved into that area, they coexisted for a few centuries, and then the Telem migrated to Burkina Faso. The tiny cliff dwellings of the short Telem people can be seen now just as in ancient times. So this is Malay, West Africa. These are the Telem or the Anu cliff dwellings right here. This is what we find in North America. Same thing. So these are the same people. And again, if you want to get really real clarity on that, go to the Malay Discovery of America on YouTube by C. Winters. Dwellings on top of mounds are not the only type of homes the Manding built. Now we go to, again, go to that YouTube thing, you're going to find out Dr. Winters telling you this. The Manding built dwellings depending on their topography. Near rivers, they lived on mounds. In semi-arid regions, they lived in cliff houses, like in the American Southwest. Today, the Dogon from Malay or Burkina Faso, who trace their descendants to the Mande, live in identical cliff dwellings as those found in Colorado, where Manding inscriptions dating to AD 1000 have been related to the Pueblo culture. So that's the pictures we just looked at. So those Pueblo so-called Indians, we are the Anu are the ancestors to them. And in a minute, you're going to see how that so-called Indian became red, and even now, we'll say yellow. And we'll look at that in a second. And so, to be fair, those houses in Colorado are similar to the Malay cliff dwellings, again, in West Africa. And so that's very important to look at. And we should definitely go to that. Now, going back to Zep Tipi, what we talked about first, again, my brother David Imhotep has this to say about the Mande or the Anu. He says, connected to the Zep-Tipi, the characteristics of the Manding, quote, they had a civilization old enough and sophisticated enough to build Bimini Road. That's the picture I showed you. 2, they had ships and the knowledge of the Americas to take them there. 3, they had the ability to build with megalithic blocks. 4, they built temples and used fluted columns exactly like in Kemet. 5, they built mounds along the Niger River in Africa like the mounds along the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. 6, they used the same gold spear formula as the Africans Columbus found in Haiti. 7, they had words matching pre-Columbus Paleo-American and West African words for gold, such as guanin and ganin. And we're going to talk about that next time. 8, they formed the base of the Olmec people, which we're going to talk about in about 20 minutes. And 9, they understood metallurgy. So for these reasons, he says that these were the Mandings, the Kemetic people, who did the Bimini culture, the Zep-Tipi. All right, any questions, comments before we go into these Mongolian invasions? Y'all good? So the Mongolians, Asians came over the Bering Strait over 3,000 years BC. That was the first one. And then 5,000 years later, they come even stronger. And this is what we have been inundated with and indoctrinated with, the fact that they created the first civilizations and there's no mention of Black folks. When, in fact, we were already here. We were here, we've been here 56,000 years ago. And so we're going to look at how this thing got started, this myth. And I'm going to go to this book called When the World Was Black by 5% of Supreme Understanding, heavily documented book. And he states, quote, so why a new world? Hold up. So why a new world? Because the old world revolved around Europe. Adam and Eve were white, and everything, including Black people, were thought to come from them. So the Americas, like Africa, spent quite a while sitting on the shelf, awaiting serious consideration by Europeans. It was during this time that the land bridge migration theory was first proposed by Jose de Acosta in 1590 in Historia Natural y Moral de las Indias. So just like they had to justify the slave trade, saying that we were inferior, they had to come up with this theory. And they have, just like I've jumped into all of these things the past 2 weeks, they had documented evidence. So in other words, they have knowledge of all of this, but they had to come up with this theory. And so what they did was they took a partial truth and magnified it. So it's true that they came, but what they didn't tell you was it was already occupied by us. I'm going to go back to Dr. Clyde Winters and read some things from him. He states that we know that even though the Beringa Passage between Asia and North America was blocked by ice between 12,000 years ago, archaeological evidence indicates that anatomically, modern humans were living in South America between 30 and 15,000 years ago. We will learn that although the Ice Age was a barrier to man's overland migration to the New World, there were many Blacks here even before the ice melted. And see, all you got to realize is what we've talked about. We didn't have to come through no ice. We came from Africa. We came directly, one way we came, the Mandi came from West Africa. And then we also came, as you're going to see in a few minutes, we came through Europe over into Canada and came down. We were the original Vikings, and we're going to get into that in a second. So, Dr. Winters goes on to say that the oldest skeletons remains have been found in the Americas, and these are skeletons, skulls of Black people. Until recently, it was believed that the first humans crossed the Bering Strait 12,000 years ago to enter the North American continent. As stated above, this view was never accepted by physical anthropologists who have found skeletal remains far older than 12,000 years ago in South America. Today, archaeologists have found sites from Argentina to Chile that range in age between 20,000 and 40,000 years old. These sites are Pedro Forada, 45,000 BC, and Sierra de Capovera, 50,000 years ago. The fact that the earliest dates for habitation of the American continent occur below Canada in South America suggests that the earliest American settlers came from Africa before the ice melted at the Bering Strait and moved northward as the ice melted. This prehistoric African presence in the New World may explain the affinities between African languages and the Amerinid family of languages. The American continent was inhabited by Asian and African Blacks in very ancient times. The oldest skeletal remains found in the Americas are of Blacks. Marquise, in his book, Man's World, New World, Arrival Pushed Back, he says it's good to report that long ago, the youthful America was also a Negro continent. And another person, Landing, says in his book, Man's New World, Arrival Pushed Back, in an article in the Chicago Tribune, he says that there was a possible movement of Negritos from Ecuador into the Pura Valley, north of Chicama and Veru in early times. So, how is it then in the 1800s, we see the so-called Native American looking like this? Okay, and so he's red. If I had color, this would be, it would come off as red. Let me show you some more. Now, we said, how is it that if the original people were Black, they come out like this? Well, when the Mongolians came, particularly the second invasion, they invaded. Sometimes they didn't invade, or while they were invaded, they amalgamated with us, they integrated with us, they intermarried with us. And when you have black and yellow mixed, it turns red. Red is not a natural color. So that's why that original man, if you look prior to the old pictures, you will see them as red. It was a mixture. And we have further evidence that the Lenape Native American or Indian is a mixture of Mongolian and African. When the Howell people left Mongolia, that's the second invasion. They came wave after wave, but the second time they came, they had already entered into the bloodstream of Africans. The last time they came was 1250 AD, and they were so massive. So the Anu, or the Africans, if not integrated, they ran. They had to fled south. They fled south. And that's why there were so many Mongolians coming. That's why the landscape, you either see red or yellow, so-called Native Americans. After years of keeping Africans out, that's the mixture that you would now have. And so I'm going to go again into about the Lenape and give you some information about the Lenape, which are in this area. Actually, there's a high school in South Jersey called Lenape, and they're named after this group. We're told, now they have this, it's an oral tradition. It's passed down through generations, and now they have it in writing. It's called the Wallam Olum, WALLAM OLUM. And this is what they say in their history. Now, I'm quoting again, Brother Imhotep. I'm sorry, I'm quoting Neves Powell and Craniofacial Morphology of the First Americans. Pattern and process in the peopling of the New World. He says, according to the Wallamalam, when the Mongolian Hangnu entered the Americas fighting, mixing their blood with the Anu, they eventually arrived in Delaware on the East Coast in 1396 AD. By the time the Mongolian Hangnu reached Delaware, they had been mixing their blood for 1,204 years and became the Lenape, also called the Algonquin. And then finally it says, in the Mississippi River region, they clashed with a large group of mound builders. You remember we talked about Cahokia, that's St. Louis, the Anu people? Well, the reason why they're not there, they banged with them and they lost. So they clashed with the mound builders, and at that point, they weren't called Anu anymore, they were called the Talagas. And so the Wallam Oquam, I'm sorry, they call the mound builders the Talagas. And this is where the Lenape clashed with the mound builders of Cahokia, just north of where St. Louis is today. The Lenape joined forces with the Iroquois and began the Talagas Wars that were among the largest battles ever fought in ancient America. The Talagas, or the Anu, were defeated and fled south, never to return. That's why they go all into South America, into Mexico. And they leaving the Great Lakes area, I'm talking about the Lenape, they traveled east, crossing into Delaware, and then headed northeast to Middle Connecticut. In Connecticut, the Lenape turned northwest, finally ending their long journey around 20 miles into the state of Ontario, Canada. When they reached Ontario in 1396 AD, they were in the area surrounded by Black people, or Proto-Americans, who were probably Skraelings, or the so-called Pygmy, or again, the Anu. The Wallam Ulam does not record another battle, so they probably settled there, blending in and mixing even more with the Anu, the short people, whatever what you want to call them, Black people. This is where the Wallam migration from Asia ended. And then we have a quote from the Mound and Mound Builders of Union County Public Library, September 3rd, 2010. It says, mound builders were not the Native Americans we call Indians. They were a prehistoric culture or cultures that inhabited much of the area we know as the United States, and we know them as Black people. Any comments or questions before I go into the Vikings? So being a part of Black history and actually coming up, I always heard and saw in my family that Native Americans were in our families, but I would become troubled when I heard, justifiably so by Claude Anderson, that the 5 so-called Indian nations sided with the Confederacy and wanted to and put us in slavery. And I couldn't believe that. Now I understand what that was all about, because we go back years to the Mongolian invasion. It's a modern day, well, I would say modern day, but during slavery and the whole Confederacy thing, those so-called Indians felt they were better than us and did not, and actually had us as slaves. And they fought in the Confederacy against us. The only group that was really, and David Katz, a Jewish guy, erroneously states in his books that the Seminoles in Florida allowed Black fugitives or escapees run away to them, implying that the Seminoles were Mongolian. But guess what? If you look at the Seminoles, they were those black skin. I mean, they favored the melanin. They were black. So they were actually hooking up and helping their brothers and sisters. And so we need to look at that. And then the whole thing, we can do a study on Tulsa, who those people were. And they were part of the Trail of Tears. Those were Native Americans who went there, took us as slaves, but then there was some who were free, black so-called Indians. But those were the beginnings of Tulsa, which is a whole nother story. But I just wanted to throw that in because it let me understand a whole lot of things. And at one time in Woodrow Wilson High, I actually taught that the Buffalo Hunters, the Buffalo Soldiers were actually wrong because they were going against the red man. And then I found out, you know, basically that so-called red man was trying to kill them also. So, you know, it's just good to do your investigations. And after a while, if you keep studying, do the research, you'll find out why certain things are where they are, why people say certain things. And I could just never understand why Claude Anderson would say that. But now I pretty much see what he was talking about. So any comments? Anything? And then we have the Vikings. I didn't talk about the Vikings, did I?
No, not yet.
Okay.
That's next.
Okay. So there's this guy named Fell, Dr. Fell. This guy wrote 2 books. He's a scholar. He's a doctor. He wrote 2 books called Saga America and America BC. And his contention, he's a leading proponent of the theory that the Norsemen and the Celtics, mariners, visited America before Columbus. He also tries to present evidence to show that the Vikings and the Celts settled in America before the Africans or the Anu. And in the next 10 minutes, we're going to destroy that myth. Because it's a total lie, it's a falsehood, and you know, without going off on a tangent, it's just amazing how people can have degrees and just use their degree to lie. Because he has no evidence, no physical evidence for his theories. And when he does make when he says great things about these so-called white Vikings, guess what he's talking about? He's talking about black people. And I'm going to show you pictures of the Vikings. There's books that show you the original Vikings. And we're talking about back to Britain. So while I'm right there, Chancellor Williams in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, says that many of the Afrocentric scholars had to go through a lot of racist scholars to find information about us. And unwittingly, they thought they were trying to put us down, make us look bad, but they shed light that we were there. And they didn't even realize what they were doing. One of these people, this is what I was talking about. And Sister Farrakhan, these books right now, these are about 100 apiece. But this is David McEnery. He's a distinguished archaeologist from England, the 1800s. What I'm getting ready to tell you is all in these books about I mean, he says it. He tries to say that, well, he says that the Vikings were black, but they weren't from Africa. Ready for this? They were from Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. But anything to, you know, discredit. But when he just keeps writing and writing, and everything that we've been sharing this week and last week about the Anu, it's all in here.
Okay.
And even the word melanosia, you know, that's black. But this is one of those books, and then that's a rare find. So they actually prove, he actually says it in here. I remember documentation. And then this one right here. This is, again, if you want to go to Larry's bookstore, you can get these. They only got a few of these left. These are basically out of print. This is an Afrocentric scholar, Renuko Rashadi. And he's talking about the Vikings also and the Anu, but he gives a lot of
I hold it
basically
up
what I
again.
just
Keep
said.
holding it up.
Mhm.
Okay. Bring it down a little bit. Next on the African presence in early Europe.
Mhm. Which shows
Okay.
about the Vikings being black. And so we have
Now you talk about Bell,
yeah.
but he is a professor of invertebrate zoology. How does he, at
Oh yeah.
Harvard?
Huh? What's his
That's
name?
Barry Fell.
Yeah, Barry Fell. Uh-huh. Yeah.
He studies he's an animal person. How does he get into history? Writing so much about history.
Well, that probably explains why he could make them theories without backing.
Yeah, because he's not. Yeah, because he's not
Definitely
even in
not
that
qualified.
field. He's not qualified. He's not even in that field.
Yeah. See, that's good.
He's in the study of zoology.
Wow. I'm just looking at the fact that he was a doctor. I just assumed that he was historian.
No, it says he's a
Ah.
professor of invertebrate zoology at the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology, and he studies starfish and sea urchins. So that tells you right there that something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Wow. So he says, Dr. Winter says, quoting Fell, he says, in his two books, Saga America and America BC, Dr. Fell argues the theory that, again, the Vikings, Celts, Norsemen, and Celtics were here. He believes that these Europeans had colonies in the northeast and southwest part of the United States. In support of this theory, Dr. Fell has published a number of inscriptions, which he claims were made by these early Europeans. The only problem with this theory is that the ancient Celts and first Vikings were black people. And the inscriptions he claims were written by Europeans were really written by, guess who? The Mande, speaking people from Mali, who settled many parts of the Americas after 1300 AD, which would be 1307, 1312. We know Abubakari. And actually, they had came before that in Anu. And then we have, I'm going to give you some more quotes. I'm going to go ancient now. I'm going to go to some Greeks and tell you who the Celts were. Ephorius, 405 BC, claimed, this is a Greek person, claimed that the Celts were blacks or Ethiopians. Tacitus, an ancient Roman historian, wrote about the Celts and the Picts being black back in 80 AD. The Celts on the mainland of Europe were called Iberians or Silurs. Although the original Celts were black, over time their name was stolen by the Europeans. And then we're going to go a little further here into these Vikings. As we look at the Malian artifacts from the Southwest and all throughout North America, it should now be clear that the so-called evidence of Vikings and Celts in the New World has nothing to do with a European colonization of the United States. The inscriptions deciphered by Fell relate to the, again, Malian expedition to the Americas, not Celts or Vikings. Moreover, if there were Vikings and Celts in the Americas before Columbus, they were black African people, not European. And so we have another person. His name is Mallory. I don't know. Maybe I need to look at him. I guess he's a historian, but he writes in Lost America, the story of pre-Columbian Iron Age in America. Now, they found iron ore mining places in North America. And he says, a Smithsonian Institute archaeologist, W.H. Holmes, and the city archaeologist of St. Louis, D.L. Bushman, confirmed the pre-Columbian pre-Columbus operation of an iron mine in Franklin County near Leslie, Missouri. They found the prehistoric mine was about 100 feet wide, running about 150 feet long to a depth of 20 feet. The passageways extended even below the present floor of the mine. The scientists recovered some 1,000 stone mining tools, sledges, hammerheads, and weighs that had been piled near the entrance. Over and over in his book, Mallory insists that the Viking Norsemen built all the mounds. Let me say that again. He says that the Viking Norsemen built all the mounds and iron smelting furnaces. But just as in Fell's case, where is the evidence to prove his case? Even Mallory admits that, quote, no genuine artifacts used by the Norse have ever been found in America, end of quote. Again, unfortunately for Mr. Mallory, no evidence, no argument. Just in Fell's case, neither his Celts, the mythical king, nor the Viking Norsemen could have built megalithic mounds with or without the iron smelting furnaces in ancient America. Now check this out, y'all. There is a story, however, that the Vikings actually admitted that when they needed iron, they went to the black dwarfs, who were the original metal making smithies, later called blacksmiths. Yep, blacksmiths, they named it that because of the black Vikings. We were the originators. Just as the Viking god of thunder Thor did. In his book, Thor's Hammer, a Norse Viking symbol, it states, in Viking mythology, even the god Thor went to the black dwarf blacksmith masters to have his hammer made. Thor's hammer and the idiotic Norse Scandinavian people before their Christianization tradition, it is an iron weapon forged by Smartfor. Quote, parenthesis, I'm sorry, black elves correlated with the Devagar dwarfs named Sindri and Broker. End of quote. Back to David Imhotep. There is physical evidence of these dwarfs making iron in Scandinavia. Winters mentioned the Oseberg sledge in the foreword. It can be seen today at the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo, Norway. So you'll get some money, you can go over there and see this. This sledge runners were made of iron. These short blacks were the first Viking sledge builders in Scandinavia. It is obvious when you observe these carvings on the sledge. Remember that these dwarfs' ancestors, the Anu, entered Europe 45,000 years ago and probably brought their metal-making skills with them from Africa. Some of their descendants were most likely the mound builders who built the iron-smelting furnaces along the Ohio River. So here's the sledge. Can you see it? There's the sledge. And here's the black people. Here's your original Vikings. You can see these are definitely black people. And so there's books on the black Vikings that you can definitely see, or the Vikings, you can definitely see that the originators were black people. I can't remember the book now, I don't have it, but there's a book from a brother from Essex County, and he's got pictures of Vikings who are black, and he does a whole dissertation on Vikings in America. He has a book about it. Oh, actually, here it is. It's called Geofacts by C.V. Haynes Jr. The first Americans were Africans. So his name is C.V. Haynes Jr. And again, a lot of what I just said is corroborated in that book. These two, man. This is awesome. This you know, and that was a racist. And so, in the concluding time, the last part, I'm going to show you about. Last week we talked about Memphis, Tennessee. Well, you want to go travel to Memphis? They got a pyramid there in Memphis. And we know why Andrew Jackson called it Memphis. because he knew about Memphis and Kemet, and he had a lot of information about it. Of course, he thought they were white, so he founded the city, called it Memphis. It cost $62 million, this pyramid. It's a 32-story glass-covered pyramid, and it's 5'6" the size of the Great Pyramid at Giza. And we go there, it also has a large statue of Ramesses II at the front entrance. Ramesses is significant because he's known as the Pyramid King. I forget the amount of pyramids he had constructed, but he had many. Plans are currently underway to build an elaborate Egyptian theme park featuring holographic pharaohs and a boat ride through a spiritual netherworld. All right, y'all, don't laugh at this. Well, don't get upset. But they really want to put the body of Elvis Presley there as a fitting memorial to the king. Quote, the king. I'm going to put him in the pyramid because he's supposed to be so great. And so I'm reading from Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, Anthony Browser, and he talks about, the influence. He's got a great book on the city of Washington, D.C., and how its Kemetic presence, everything that the so-called founding fathers did with that city, of course, with the greatness of Benjamin Banneker, they had Kemet in mind. But we're going to end today with some of the finds that we found in Mexico from the Olmec. And these were basically Black people who traveled the 25th dynasty from Kemet over into Mexico. And we see illustrations. There's over 20 of these found. And here is, they're called the Olmec. And here we go. These are Black people. Once they find something great, they got to make excuses. They try to tell us that these are creatures from outer space. They tried that for a while. And they're called the Olmec because these are people of rubber. They bought rubber. And so rubber was prevalent in Kemet. So they called them the rubber people, or the people from the land where rubber is produced. And the place where they have all these great monuments, artifacts of these great Blacks is called La Venta. And you can see La Venta. I was going to show you some of the pyramids there. Some of the other. Okay, so this is classic. And he was the first person to actually get this picture, Brother Anthony Browser. You can see that the cornrows in this. So when you go to Mexico, you can see this. These are things that we built. And fortunately, Ivan Van Sertima, we won't get into it today. Next time, though, it's the whole book about the African presence in early America. This is volume 2. I have the first volume here also that came before Columbus, which we showed before. And I want to go to Africa presence in early America to give you something from a person who was dedicated to showing the Blackness of the ancient African people in Mexico. A German scholar by his name was Alexander von Wafano. And I'm going to give you some of his words and show you what he's referring to. And this will conclude. We'll further get into this next time. He says, listen to this. This is a German guy. It's about time that the Black communities in the United States insist that in schools and universities, even if only one member of their community is attending them, the true picture of ancient America and a reformed concept of ancient African history beginning with the earliest Nubian kings, should be revealed. From around 1000 BC until the post-classic era in the 16th century, we have an abundant testimony of African portraitures in clay, stone, and jaded on the American continent. The concept that all the African faces shown in this book could be casual creations of the many artists in pre-Columbian America is absurd. He's a white guy. I definitely claim that nobody can invent a Negroid face if he has not seen one on a continent where Africans were never native. Since they could not swim over the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, they could only arrive by ships, canoes, or rafts. I refuse to accept any other explanation. Besides that, all the figures, big and small, were works of art produced to commemorate or accompany the dead who were loved and venerated by their communities. Certainly, all the artists made a great effort to portray the contemporaries of the deceased so that they should not make their trip to the underworld alone. It is nonsense to believe that they would create somebody the dead never knew or could not recognize as a member of his community. And so this is what he's referring to. And this guy dedicated his life to unearthing these. Next time, we're going to talk about these slant eyes. We're going to talk about the Shanghai integrating with the Olmec, what that's about. So those are Black Asians. We'll get into that.
Who's the author? Who are you talking about? The German guy?
Alexander von Wathonu. Want me to spell it for you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Alexander von Wathonu, Wuthenu. And he's actually was a great friend of Van Sertima and some other Kamari in New York. Some of the other historians who went down to Mexico. They studied with him. Here's some other stuff that he unearthed.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sense of words because it was just
And then finally these. So
okay.
I hope that you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna do part 3 next week if it's all right with y'all.
Yes. What's the topic?
I want to do one more on these because I want to go further into the Olmec. I want to go into
I like those guys. Okay, good. I like those parts.
And then you heard about the Californians, Queen Khalifa? Ah, yeah. Y'all got to hear this. California was named after a Black queen. They actually, you're going to love this. Yeah. And then you have in Arizona, Folsom people. That's us.
Okay.
So we're gonna look at those, and that'll conclude the Americas. Again, it will take about a whole year course to do Blacks in America before Columbus and before the slave trade 1619. I mean, we were that thick, and we just did so much. So. Y'all enjoyed? You learned something? And
oh yeah.
Comments.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's good. That's a good resources. Some of the books.
Yeah, and they're a lot of them they're just about out of print. There was some other ones. There's a Gladwin thesis, and that talks about the Australian presence in America, which is very interesting too. So especially when you get out west and southwest, you've got